Look, it is emotional, and it can be difficult at times, but there is, there's a lot about that I really enjoy, and I think is kind of what helps to make our live show really electric and really energetic, because it is really real stuff that we're kind of that we're putting out there every night.
Michael of Written by Wolves. It is the morning for you, it's the evening for me. We are on opposite sides of the world, but through the power of technology, we get to talk. This is it's been a special few days because usually I talk to people before an album comes out. You just released your album. So how are you doing?
Dude, I'm amazing. It's so good to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, it is never easy sorting these things out when we're on the other side of the world, but I really, really appreciate the fact that we can get this over the line. Look, I'm great, man, and I'm very, very excited to have this album out in the world. Like it is, it's been a 2 year, well, it's been at least a 2 year process. I think we kind of worked out that a lot of the songs kind of were slightly starting to sort of have their inception slightly before that as well. But I'm going to call it 2 years, and it's been in a really intense process from start to finish. But here we are, and we're really excited to have this thing out in the world and to let it be yours now, no longer ours. Like it is
Exactly.
there's kind of a nice release there.
Yeah. You're no longer just sitting on that little thing that's just yours. Now everybody can make it their own. But hey, walk us through, for you, release weekend itself, which in today's world, unfortunately, in a way, is spending a lot of time on social platforms and, liking and resharing and posting kind of stuff. But how do you guys celebrate the release?
Look, we're notorious, and we talk about it a lot for not being very good at celebrating the wins and kind of taking the moments and going like that. Like you said, we live in a real sort of connected world now, which is amazing, and it means that we can connect directly with our fans around the world in real time when an album comes out, and that's amazing. And I never want to kind of take that for granted, especially the fact that we are down in New Zealand, and most of our fan base is in the United States or Canada or Europe or the UK. It's amazing that we can do this and kind of have these really real sort of strong connections with those fans over there. That being said, we kind of we got the video for the Lighthouse out. Obviously, the other thing with time zones is that the album drops at different times for the rest of the world, because it doesn't drop till it's midnight for you guys, and so midnight for us is very different to the rest of the world. So then that's always tricky to schedule music video releases as well. So
I bet.
Basically the video came out at 9 a.m. New Zealand time, which meant that it was still the 25th, not the 26th. The album wasn't out for everyone, so we got that out. We did that. We started sort of sharing. We started doing all the things, and I did a lot of live chatting and a lot of live streaming with fans and things like that. And then we went out for lunch. The band was like, right, we're going to chill for a bit. We're going to go out for lunch. We're going to chill. We're going to have a cheers. We're going to have some drinks. We're going to do that. And then we'll get back into it. But look, to be honest, we're so busy right now. We've got our album release show coming up on Friday. So we haven't played that yet. So there's still 1,000 things to do. So we kind of release weekend. We had our kind of moment of celebration. We're straight back on social media there and straight back into the rehearsal room, because we're kind of pushing the boat out a little bit with this show. We've got a full string section. We've got a choir. We've got all sorts of things happening to kind of make this album come to life in real life in the way that we kind of always envisaged it. So the show's going to be wild. So it's kind of, there's never really a moment to kind of just sit and chill and kind of take stock. It's all, and I think once that show happens, we'll kind of get that chance to kind of maybe sit back and go, all right, we did that thing. But like you say, the social media thing is certainly something that you spend a lot of time on, but it's certainly something that we that we feel. Siri always pops up every now and again. Siri doesn't like my accent and pops up when I'm sort of mid sentence half the time. And is it if I don't stop it, you get Siri in the conversation going, I can't find that.
For sure.
Look, social media is this amazing thing, and we'll never ever take for granted the connection that it enables us to have with our fans, and the ability for them to tell us what these songs mean to them, and for us to be able to communicate the same way to them. So it's an amazing process to sort of have that ability these days, in this day and age, to be able to talk to people directly about how these songs are connecting with them in real time as it's releasing.
Look for the lighthouse, it'll guide you home.
You mentioned the Lighthouse video as well, which clearly is a special one. And that song also stands out on the album because it is, you know, you guys do take your foot off the gas for that one. And it's more of a serene moment, if you will. I can now already see this as a staple of your live shows, where we'll see a sea of lighters or flashlights of cell phones these days. Fair to say that even though this was not, you know, the first or second single, but this is the focus track for this release, and we're going to hear this song live.
Absolutely. Look, this is it's kind of that song is kind of the crux of the album, right? Like, it's kind of what the idea. I mean, the album itself is a concept album. The album in itself, when listened from start to finish, tells a story. The Lighthouse is kind of I suppose, the crux of what it is we're talking about. It's the kind of the turning point in the story. It's the moment where you kind of realize what's going on. So we felt it really important to make that the focus track for the album on release day. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, it's probably, like, strategically and marketing wise, it's not necessarily the song that should be the focus track with the album. As you say, it's slow, it's a ballad, it's kind of but it was so important for us to kind of make sure that song had its moment in the sun. I mean, you'll notice that with this album, we've done things differently to what we've ever done before, and we've not followed that sort of strategic, sort of standard sort of album release plan where you release 3 singles and then a focus track. We saw after we released Secrets, that our last album, that we ended up with these songs that just didn't really get their moment, and we kind of felt like we'd almost wasted them. So we wanted with this album to release as many of the songs as singles as we possibly could before the album came out, ensuring still that there was enough left of the album that people didn't feel like when the album dropped it was a bit of a letdown. So we still wanted to have enough surprises with that. But I think obviously the Lighthouse was a really strong statement. It obviously is what the entire album's about. So we wanted to make sure on release day that we got the opportunity to really kind of let that have its moment and tell this story. And if people hear that, then they can kind of they start to get a sense of what the album's about, and they hopefully will then go hit play on track 1 and listen right through to the end. But I mean, as you say, it's a really special video, it's a really special song. We got to shoot this one with a really great friend of ours who's kind of like family now, he's actually based in Melbourne. We're based in Auckland, so we shot our parts in Auckland. He shot all of the storyline parts in Melbourne, but we've got a really great vibe and a really similar ideas of how we want to tell the stories. So I can tell him a story of, you know, what this is about, and we kind of get this vision that comes together really quickly together, that we can sort of it's like an extension of the story, and we can tell that with visuals, which I think has always been such an important part of this band as well. The way we tell a story visually is such it's part and parcel of the sort of cinematic nature of the way that these songs work, and it's something that's always been really important to us.
For the lighthouse, it'll guide you home.
Doing things a little different. We've seen more than a couple bands coming out of New Zealand being comfortable in doing things a little different. Like an example that comes to mind, or, you know, Banks Arcade, that you guys know very well.
Yeah.
Is that for somebody that is very much on the outside of the New Zealand scene? Is there, you know, where in many other countries you would have an army of gatekeepers yelling, "That's not metal." And so far, because I do go through all the comments on all your videos, I don't see that a lot with you guys. Is there a mentality in the New Zealand scene that boxes are to be stayed out of or broken out of?
It's interesting. That's a really interesting question, and one that I've kind of not really been asked before. I think in New Zealand, we're used, because we're such a small country, there's only 5 million people in our country. We're really used to having to kind of do things differently to kind of you know, we're used to trying to punch above our weight, I suppose.
Right.
You know, we've got a small population. It's kind of easy to be kind of forgot. You know, like we're left off half the maps. So you kind of, you know, you're kind of used to having to kind of punch above your weight, and I suppose doing things differently to ensure that you do stand out and cut through, because you know, it's really easy to not be in the conversation, I suppose. But I think there's something really freeing about that, in the sense that we can kind of do whatever we want, because you know, we're not trying to play within this box, because we are already starting outside of it. You know, like, you know, we're not coming from the States, we're not coming from Europe, we're not even coming from, I suppose, even Australia, to an extent, in which you already start from that. Because we start from outside the box, there's no point in trying to get yourself into it, I suppose. Look, I mean, there's still the mentality down here a little bit of you know, it's really hard to kind of to get onto radio stations and to do things like that, because once you do start, you know, the box still exists here. You know, the mainstream kind of rock box and the mainstream metal kind of box, it still exists here. But I think one thing that we've always tried to be very clear on is that we're not any of it. Like, we've never said we're metal. We've never really even said we're rock. We've just always said that we just do this thing that we do. And if you like it, epic. If you don't, then, you know, maybe give it another listen and see if we can change your mind. But, you know, we've never tried to fit in a box. And I think that's been amazing for us as a band. And I know it's kind of similar for Banks Arcade. It can be frustrating too, because, you know, it's hard, and it can be a really real grind and a real slog, because people don't know where to put you.
Exactly, yeah. But
there's a real sort of, I mean, I think it's a really, musically and songwriting wise, and kind of, I suppose, for want of a better term, it's kind of good for the soul. Like, we kind of feel like we can kind of go anywhere we want to, which is amazing. And I think that is part of the connection that we do have with the fans, is that, you know, they don't really know what's coming next, and in some instances we don't really know what's coming either. So I think, you know, in a sense, you know, it can feel a little bit tough, you know, when you do come from, you know, we're an island at the bottom of the world, and that can feel a little bit isolating sometimes, especially when you start out in a band. But as I say, there's something slightly freeing about that, and that you can kind of feel like you can just shoot for the stars and do whatever the hell you want, and hope like hell it comes off.
I want to address also the song Goddess, which, I mean, you've had some songs that stand out for you, for sure. Like, you've had some songs that did really well streaming wise. For this album cycle, this seems to be one of those very popular songs. It stands out also, you know, beautiful video that a lot of people love. And through the storyline, and, you know, I'll let people go discover it themselves, you know, without giving away too much, but also seems to have become a bit of an anthem for people that have felt not really, you know, present in the metal scene, or you know, represented, especially people from who identify as queer, through the video. Seeing that and seeing the very positive response on the whole thing, part of, like, it allows you, I guess, to be not just from a musical perspective where you don't really care about boundaries between genres, but also from a thematic perspective, to be an extremely inclusive band, which should be so normal in 2024. But let's be honest, it's not always the case. Is that something that you go in with, like, oh, we want to make a statement, or was it more like, oh, this is how people react to it? Like, do you start to realize, I know that you said earlier that you haven't really taken that step back to really take it all in, but are you starting to realize that you have more than just an entertainment function for your fans? That it's gone beyond that?
Yeah. Look, I mean, you kind of...
Does it scare you? Does it feel like... Does it come with pressure?
Look, sorry. it does. It does and it doesn't. Look,
Yeah.
and it's not something that I always consciously sort of have on my mind or kind of think about. It doesn't necessarily shape the way in which we do things. We just, and I think, you take Goddess, and I think that's a really great example. It's not really something that we set out to do. It wasn't overly intentional. It wasn't, let's make a statement. It was trying to tell the story in the way that we felt was the best way to tell the story. And also, I suppose, in a way that was possibly unexpected. I mean, obviously, people might listen to, and clearly hearing me sing that song, they might not listen to that and see that in a situation in which they would picture two women talking to each other in that regard.
Right.
But the song's about a goddess, it's about, so why not have two? But I think, look, we do, I think I started to realize that the band kind of was slightly more than just music to people relatively early on, because we started to get lots of messages from people, like almost daily, telling us about what our music meant to them and what it had done for them, and the way that it had helped them through dark places, or the way in which in some cases they were telling me that it had saved their lives. And this kind of blew me away. Like, it was never the intention of the band. I didn't set out to do that. And It kind of, when it started to happen, I was absolutely like in awe and amazed that we could do that for people. Like, it was kind of, I suppose, a happy accident. I mean, music has always been my therapy. Like, it's how songwriting is how I get what I'm feeling out. It's how I deal with emotion. It's how I deal with any sort of dark places that I'm in. And so I think in doing that, people were able to relate to that and relate their own issues and their own problems to that, because they're really real issues. Like, it's really normal, real stuff. So people can kind of start to relate that to their own things and their own mental health issues, and they can put that, and it becomes their form of therapy as well as my own. I think, and so we started to realize, is there something that we can do more in this regard than just music? Like, can we do more? And that's when we came up with the concept of the collab project, which is an EP that we released a couple of years ago now, where we re-released songs from Secrets, but we did it with artists from all over the world. So we had Sonny from POD, we had Kellen Quinn, we had Sydney Ray White from The Wild Things, we had my wife Bex on it. And it was just this amazing. We had Trenton from Hands Like Houses. It was just this amazing thing. But it was never intended to just be music. It was intended as an initiative that we were starting, that would always be a part of the band, that could kind of help to remind our fans and followers and our friends that no matter what they're going through, they don't need to do it alone. And I think it was kind of around that moment where we came up with this concept for the collab project that we kind of realized that we can be more, I suppose, than just music to our fans. And I think that's something that we kind of take into account in everything that we do. How do we do slightly more? I think that's why, like, this album is an entire story. And one day I'm probably just going to write an album of songs that have no connection to each other and don't mean anything, and just sit back and enjoy that. But right now I kind of feel this is what we feel like we should do, and what feels right. And I think that's pretty amazing. And it is something. So to go, I've rambled, and I ramble a lot, and I apologize for that. But it is something that we're aware of, and it is something that we do take into account. It's not always something that we act on purpose, but it is something that we do sort of, we certainly don't take for granted, and are really honored to kind of have that sort of place in people's lives.
Now, you mentioned a few times music as therapy. I want to ask you a question, and I don't like to, people watching this channel, religiously, know that rarely, rehash questions. But there's a question I've asked a couple people before that I'd love to check in with you, because you've shared in other interviews that this is also, even though you're telling a story and what have you, it is a very personal album, and you touch on some very personal subject matters. seeing the response to this, knowing that some of these songs that might be really difficult for you, or at least were difficult to write, become so popular also means they're going to have to play them, and play them many, many, many times. And so the question I have for you, and I get very different responses to this, when songs deal about darker things in your own life, performing these songs over and over, is that always helpful, or does that mean that you do have to go back to those darker moments and conquer it every time you sing it in a way? What's that like for you?
Look, I think in some ways it's kind of like, it's almost like a victory lap in a way, you know, like if you have sort of got through something and you've managed to write about it and you get to do it on stage, it's kind of like remembering where you were, but also remembering where you've got to. I think, you know, there's a lot of really personal stuff that we write about, and obviously, like, there's a track on the album called Please Just Breathe, which is all about the day that my dad passed away. And that, like, when we first played that was really difficult, but also there was something amazing about it. Like, it was kind of, there's this, I suppose, connection in doing that song to everything that happened, and like it sort of means that I never feel like I'm kind of forgetting that stuff. And whilst that was a really difficult day and a really difficult time in my life, I don't ever want to kind of forget all of everything that kind of happened around that. It's almost like, I suppose, writing in a diary or a journal to ensure that you never kind of forget those feelings, and because there's a lot of good stuff that kind of comes out of that as well. And whilst like, you know, that song in particular, I always find really, really emotional to play, and it's hard to do it without sort of shedding a tear here and there. But I kind of like that, you know, like there's something about that kind of makes it feel real, and makes that performance feel like I'm really connected, and sort of giving this real sort of energy and this real performance to the crowd. And you know, it can be really, really, really easy, I suppose, in the life of an entertainer to kind of go into autopilot mode, especially once you're doing it night in, night out, and it comes over and over and over. And I think sometimes having these songs that kind of tell these stories and these really emotional sort of things that have happened in my life, it kind of helps me to stay connected and keep in the moment and keep in the zone. But we also kind of turn, like live, we kind of turn all of this stuff into kind of happy stuff. And so like our live show is incredibly energetic. And so it's kind of like, there's almost, you know, it's almost like you're kind of taking the power back over these things and turning it into a party that people can kind of use that to kind of get out all of their own sort of negative emotion as well. So look, it is emotional, and it can be difficult at times, but there is, you know, there's a lot about that I really enjoy, and I think is kind of what helps to make our live show really electric and really energetic, because it is really real stuff that we're kind of that we're putting out there every night.
Before you turn to leave, please just breathe and beckon you.
More and more people will be able to listen to those very important songs, and I'm sure that for you, not only playing these songs live, but seeing how it affects other people and how they relate with it, that is also a really interesting feeling of a victory lap. Thank you so much for your time today. Very excited for you guys to, you know, have this new era of your career, let's call it. And we're excited to see you on the road. We obviously hope you come to Canada very soon. And when you do, we'll be there. Thank you so much for your time, man. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I absolutely love chatting with you. And yeah, Canada's on the list, so fingers crossed we get there real soon, all right?
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it, and subscribe to the channel.